Welcome back to Your Average Witch, where we talk about witch life, witch stories, and sometimes a little witchcraft. In this episode, I talked to Victoria Raschke, witch, publisher, and author of books like Mermaids, Werewolves, and Witches, Oh My, and the Voices of the Dead series. Victoria tells us about how it feels moving from the Appalachians to California, how writing is part of her witchcraft, and how a can of beer proved validation for her craft. Now let's get to the stories. Hi, Victoria. Welcome to the show.
Hi, it's good to be here.
Would you please introduce yourself? Let everybody know who you are and what you do.
Yeah, my name is Victoria Raschke. I'm an author. I currently have 5 books out. The first 4 are a series, The Voices of the Dead, which is contemporary fantasy set in Slovenia, which is maybe some people have to look up on a map, but it's former Yugoslavia. So it's kind of I would say in the vein of like American Gods or Rivers of London, if people have read those books. And I also own a small publishing company with my husband, 1000 Volt Press, just, I guess, as the new name of your podcast, An Average Witch as well.
Yeah, I didn't want to risk getting sued by some Game Boys.
Yeah. The joys of, having to figure all of that out.
Yeah. Are you on social media? Do you want to give out where they can find you?
I am on social media. I'm a little quiet right now. I kind of seem to get quiet in the summer and things pick back up in the fall. But I also have a website, which is victoriaraschke.com, which is pretty easy to remember. And then on Instagram, I'm Victoria_Raschke. And on Twitter, I'm VRaschke. That's where I post all my political stuff. So if you don't want that, don't follow me on Twitter. And then I have an author page on Facebook that's also Victoria Raschke author. And if you go to the website, you can also sign up for the newsletter, which is about every month, every other month. And it's just kind of like updates on new books coming out, or if, when the world goes back to normal, if I'm going to do a reading or event somewhere. I forgot. The 5th book is like a cookbook spell book that goes with the first series called the Renegade Tea Cookbook. Yeah. So that's kind of the more witchier. I mean, the books have witches in them, but the cookbook itself is a little witchier.
I just recently interviewed an author who her books are witch specific, like for witches. Mm-hmm. Who would you say yours are for?
Honestly, the story that I tell, so one of my best friends is also an author. She's like on book, I don't know, 45 or something. She's way ahead of me in this game. But we were joking and I was like, I love reading books about people who discover that they're magic or they're chosen, but I'm kind of tired of it being like a whiny teenager. Why can't it be like a woman in her 40s with a job and a kid and like that? So that was the book I decided to write. So the main character's 40 something. She has a grown kid. Well, yeah, early 20s kid. And, I think it's for anyone who's interested in armchair travel, because really Slovenia and the capital city, Ljubljana, are a character in the book. Honestly, I lived there when I was in college and fell in love with it. And I think honestly, the whole series is kind of a love letter to Slovenia. But yeah, I think it's for anybody who's just kind of interested in those stories, but wanted a little different angle and maybe see more of themselves than a teenager in it. So, but definitely witch adjacent. Let's put it that way.
I like that idea. What does it mean to you when you call yourself a witch?
It took me a while, I would say, to actually claim that. I kind of discovered witchcraft, paganism, I guess, depending on how you want to frame it, in college. I guess I always kind of had those tendencies, and my family is Appalachian, so stuff was going on that I didn't really pick up on or realize what was going on until later. But to me, like, it's kind of a reclaiming word. I mean, witch was never in history used as like, an honorific. So for women to say I'm a witch, or men or non-binary people or whoever wants to use it, want to call themselves witch, I think is claiming back some power of being an outsider and being different. So I think that's what I like about using that word and identifying as a witch. It feels like a very powerful word, and to claim that for myself is a source of power itself, I guess. So
Do you have any daily practices that you'll share with us?
Yeah, I have an ancestor altar that I usually leave offerings for. That has been like probably the center of my practice for the last few years, is just kind of reconnecting to where I'm from. And that's broadly European. And kind of reconnecting with those people. And both of my parents have passed. So it's also just kind of a way to, I think, stay a little grounded in the world, you know. And I also keep a house altar that I, kind of honor the phases of the moon and the seasons. I'm not super keen on like the traditional air quotes wheel of the year. Um, it doesn't, I mean, I lived in the South before and now I live in California, and I'm in California, like the weather's the same every day and it's 70 something degrees and the sky's blue. So seasonality is a little different. So getting used to I'm still getting used to that. We've been here a couple months, so I'm still kind of getting used to California. But even in the South,
Oh,
even in Tennessee, where there are truly four seasons, they don't line up with like Northern Europe seasons. I mean, it's a whole different bag. So I kind of, before living in East Tennessee, kind of had my own seasons in my head, like things that I would do for that. I trained as a chef in between all of the other weird things I've done in my life. So cooking is a big part of what I think my daily practice is too. And I have like certain dishes to me that kind of signal like this is the season for
yeah.
this. There's a soup that's in like one of Molly Katzen's original Moosewood books. That's like a fall soup. And so I make that when it actually gets cold. I'm not sure when that's going to happen in California. That's going to be a different thing.
January.
Yeah, I'm going to have to figure out like when is fall in, the Bay Area. So yeah, it's going to be a whole new thing. But yeah, so I think that's largely my daily part. There's a couple other things that I kind of keep to myself, but those are like the big things that I think, anyone in our house would probably pick up on or notice.
Now, you said that you had some sort of not hidden, but things you didn't notice growing up, and you grew up in Appalachia.
Hmm.
What do you have any family history with witchcraft? And if you do, can you dig into that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, I would not say that any of my family, Appalachian or otherwise, would have ever considered themselves a witch. Like, that's not a word they would have used.
Heaven forbid.
Yeah. But I mean, folk magic was definitely part of it. I had a cousin who was like a wart charmer, who would
Hmm.
like buy your warts off you. And which I was really glad for some reason, like many teenagers, I had a bout of that in high school, and she would buy my warts off me and they would go away. And then, my there were always like a little bit of superstition. I just remember this, like the Appalachian, there's a museum not very far from where I grew up. It's like the Appalachian History Museum. And we were there. My aunt had come from California and we were walking around and I got stung by a bee. And my mom was a smoker at that point. I can't remember if my aunt still smoked then, but my mom was still a smoker. And she tore open one of her cigarettes and like made this like tobacco poultice with spit and tobacco like right there in the middle
Oh.
of the thing. And I was like, okay, this is not like every family doesn't do this. There's just like this realization that there's some things going on that I didn't quite get. And then when I got older in high school, my parents both kind of got into some new age kind of practices. My dad bought a tarot deck and my mom had a
Oh.
pendulum, and they would go to like channeling sessions with another friend of theirs. And I went to a couple of them, and I didn't really, I was pretty skeptical about the channeling. I don't know. I think the way that they were set up, I just couldn't quite buy into it. But I did really like the tarot cards. And like I said, my parents had both passed, and I had my dad's tarot cards, and I had my mom's pendulum, and I used those. And I think having that definitely not mainstream religious part, like right when I was leaving home, kind of set me up to discover, because I'd always been searching for something. Like my parents didn't really go to church or anything, even though they both grew up, in ostensibly religious households. But I always just kind of felt like something was missing. And I think them having that, their own searching thing kind of toward the end of me being at home all the time, kind of opened the door for me to go, well, maybe it's outside Christianity, because I had tried every like denomination in our little town and was unsatisfied by that experience. And when I got to college, I found like a women's spirituality group, which was still kind of new agey adjacent, but there were definitely witchier folks involved, and that kind of led me down that road. And then just buying books, because I was an English major and I could do that. So
Hmm.
there was a lot of reading, like, 18, 19, to go, yeah, maybe this is the path. But I think my family set me up for it in their own way, just by kind of being open to there being something out there different or other than us. So
That always fascinates me when people talk about growing up with it, because my granddad was a minister, but my parents were super not religious. They weren't atheist. It just never came up.
mhm.
I don't know what the hell they believed, but they
Yeah.
didn't raise us in with any beliefs like that. So it's just really interesting to hear your dad went out and got tarot cards. I can't imagine any of them. Like, I have 12. I can't imagine either of my parents buying a crystal even.
Yeah. Oh no, my mom definitely got into some rock buying, and it was an interesting time. I mean, there was also like, I mean, I think in the bigger circle of folks they were in, there was a guy who did psychic fairs, and I was by that time I was in college, and he needed someone to help him out, like in the town where I went to college, and so I helped. Like I worked psychic fairs for a few years, which
Neat.
was an intense experience too. And also I met like witchy folks through that. Like psychic fairs are definitely kind of a new age centered thing, but there were definitely witchy folks about, and those were the folks I connected with. So but yeah, it was, I don't know, I had friends who were kind of going through that same exploratory phase and having come from very religious households or very conservative households. Like it was much harder for them to make those connections to those things. I kind of felt like it was a gift that my parents hadn't been dogmatic about things. So it was really nice to be able to have that experience, have that freedom to explore, and not have the guilt that I saw a lot of my friends also go through with
Yeah.
that. I just didn't have that, which was very freeing. So
I love the differences.
hmm
But here we are well, we claim the same word.
yeah, yeah. Like getting to it is many roots, definitely. So
What would you say is your first experience with witchcraft? And you can either go back to childhood, or you can just when you yourself decided I'm a witch.
um this is
Or
this is going to
both.
sound very strange. So I think the moment I realized that, like, yeah, there might be something to this. I was in college. I had gone home for the weekend, and I wasn't old enough to drink yet. And the next weekend, a bunch of friends of mine, we were all going like to a cabin for the weekend, and each person was going to cook a meal. And I was supposed to make beer bread, which is this thing that I made all the time with my dad, but I couldn't buy beer to make the beer bread. So dad was going to give me one to put in the trunk of my car, like wrap up and keep in the trunk of my car until I was ready to cook with. And he forgot, and I left, and I drive all the way back to college, and I realized that, oh crap, I didn't get the beer, and none of us are old enough to buy beer. And I opened my car door to get out, and there is a can of beer, unopened can of beer, sitting on the concrete next to my car. Like right
Huh.
where I opened the door, there's a beer. And I was like, okay, I don't know if that was me or if that was dad, but apparently I have the beer for the beer bread. And I was like, okay, I was completely convinced by that very strange experience that this was real. So,
I love how there's just a fraction of possibility because it's college.
oh yeah, I
But
mean, I'm
also, are
sure
you
that,
serious? Where did this come from?
yeah, it was like, well, and then it was so perfectly placed. I think if I had just like found it walking back to my dorm, I probably would have been less like, oh, that was convenient. Somebody left me beer. But like for it to be like literally, I remember like as I'm driving into the parking lot, oh, we forgot the beer, and then open up and the beer is there. Was one of those like, okay, maybe there's something to this. It may have also been a coincidence, but it was very well timed one. So
Yeah, when it's that perfect.
yeah.
What would you say is your best or favorite witch experience?
Um, hmm. I think for me, just that feeling, it's happened multiple times. I mean, I remember it happening with like a group of us went out like in a field in college and did like just a little seasonal ritual. And it's happened sometimes by myself. I do find it happens more in groups of people, but I've had it in churches as well. Like, I don't think it is necessarily unique to witchcraft, but that's that moment when everything feels aligned and you feel connected to everybody that's there. And it's kind of that, I don't know, it's kind of an ecstatic feeling, really. Just this, like, you don't feel quite so alone in the universe. Like, you can actually reach out and pick the threads a little bit. And I think part of that is a connected feeling. And so, like, over the last year and a half, I would not say I've necessarily had that feeling because, COVID and being alone. But I think that is my favorite thing about practicing with people is when that happens. And it doesn't happen, every time I've done like public rituals or group rituals or anything like that. But it definitely is the thing that I look for. It's the thing that I'm seeking, I think, in those moments. So
I've never worked with anyone.
yeah, I
But
didn't for a long time.
I'm making the terrible decision to travel during COVID, and I'm going down Hada's Purpose, so I'm hoping we
Oh,
do something there.
yeah. Well, yeah, I will. I will wish that for you, and good luck and safe travels and no COVID. So,
Oh, Lord.
I'm a little jealous. Like I'm not quite. I have pretty. I mean, it's well controlled, but I have what I would consider moderate asthma. So I'm a little leery of
Oh,
getting COVID.
yeah.
So I've been pretty circumspect about traveling, but I'm envious. So.
I'm dreading it.
Well,
'Cause
hopefully,
it's a change, and I'm
yeah,
bad with that.
yeah. Well, hopefully, it'll be a great experience, though. I mean, I do think
I'm hoping
probably
so.
on this scale, I am a solitary practitioner for the most part. I'm pretty introverted, and despite webcast or podcasting and all that,
Yeah,
but
this is my socialization for the week.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I hang out with my husband and my cat most days.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. That's
yeah,
plenty.
yeah. But I do. There's something about connecting to people, and I don't know. I mean, I think it's just a very different experience. And like I said, the first time I remember ever feeling that way, my dad went on this bench, like probably when I was in high school, like before he discovered New Age spirituality. He decided to go back to his own roots, and we went to a Lutheran church for a little while. And just the music, like that those German hymns will do it. It's still now, and I don't consider myself a Christian. I respect Christians. I don't have any problem believing Jesus was a real person, any of that. But those Christian hymns, those German hymns still get me. Like, sing Silent Night to me in German and I'm done. Those still have the power to do that connectivity piece. So yeah, I don't think any religion has that feeling locked up. So
What would you say is your worst witchcraft experience? Either it just went completely berserk and you laugh when you tell it, or just something bad happened.
yeah, I mean, I was trying to think if I had anything like this when I getting the questions, and like, I can't really think of anything off the top of my head. I mean, I've had like things go awry, like, a candle sputter and flame up, and like, am I going to catch the curtains on fire? Those kind of mishaps have happened, but nothing that like was specifically like, oh, I did a bad witchcraft thing or something happened like that. But yeah, I think just your general like fire and safety hazards have been the only thing. So
I had a recent one of those.
yeah.
I don't do spell jars very often, but I was doing one, and then I made the idiotic decision to put it on a paper towel to catch any dripped off wax. And then I was doing other things. I was like not away from it. It was in the process of getting wax to drip down. And I caught the paper towel on fire, and it was on my jewelry bench on the lower level. So there was stuff on the top level. And so this paper towel's on fire, and I'm just looking at it thinking, well, shit. how am I going to do this? And I just made that bench and it's really pretty and I don't want it to get burnt. Damn it.
I was gonna say, I would imagine like on a jury bench, there's probably flammables nearby. Like there's probably some flammable
I
things.
ended up getting my the cloth that I use to wipe water off stuff when I anneal it and just like clumping it down on all the paper towel. It's burnt now, but whatever. The fire went out.
That's an important thing. Fire safety. Fire safety. I always wonder, like, when people talk about like witches' tools, I was like, no one ever talks about a fire extinguisher. Like,
Oh
maybe
my
that's something we
gosh.
should think about.
And always have a lid for your cauldron.
Yes, anytime fire is involved, and I always joke like my son is this way too. Is like, Miss Safety, Mr. Safety, and I occasionally do stupid things too, just because you're in the moment and you forget.
Yep.
So,
Oh, everything burns.
yeah.
Hooray.
Oh, maybe you shouldn't sprinkle herbs directly on top of the candle while it's lit.
Or stand over it
Yes.
real close with your hair down.
Yes. Yes. Those are all bad things. Don't, it's like kitchen safety. Don't wear your hair down and don't have long flowy sleeves. It's like all the things you want when you're like practicing witchcraft
Yep.
are not like good for fire safety. So,
What would you say is your biggest motivator in your witchcraft?
this is going to probably be a weird answer, but I think it's like some kind of homeostasis, like just having a balance. I tend to be naturally a depressive person. I'm a writer. I'm a Scorpio. It's like that, like, it's like written on my entrance into the world. She's probably going to be a little dark. So I think just having like a way to reconnect to good stuff, like a lot of the things that I like, what I would consider doing spells and stuff is really just like kind of getting back to even, like, not happy or ecstatic necessarily, but just like kind of evening me out. It's, sometimes it's simple as just like, maybe you just need to sit down and have a cup of tea. Like, let's just think about why you're in this place. And it's really been a lesson in the last year and a half. Like I said, just being isolated and moving cross country, and there's just been a lot of challenges. My son moved out again and he's in Maine and I'm in California. So he's, almost 4,000 miles away, 3,500 miles away. So there's been a lot to adjust to. And I think that just that kind of evening out things is really the drive, like making sure I feel grounded and connected and don't go too deep down those mental rabbit holes, which I'm really good at. So,
Do you feel like it's kind of related to the next question, which is your biggest challenges? Have you had any challenges from your neighborhood or the society around you? Is it very different from Tennessee? Is California very different from Tennessee in that way?
the thing I've noticed here, I'm in the South Bay, so we're kind of in Silicon Valley, and like people just don't really even notice you. Like everybody's kind of doing their own thing. It's, a lot of people who are kind of transient to the area. They come in for work or they leave. So just in the couple months I've been here, like nobody's blinked at me really. And like I was never in Tennessee. Like I joke, people think, oh, you dress really witchy. Honestly, all my clothes are black because I don't like making decisions about what to wear. So I just like buy, if it comes in black, I'll buy it, it's like, it's just, but I never like wore a lot of witchy jewelry, or anything like that. I had it on, but you couldn't see it, I was just never super like in your face. What Byron Ballard described it at a talk I saw, is like wearing a pentacle the size of a hubcap around your neck. I just, that was never the way I went about things. And I was not super closeted about it. Like if people would ask, I would be pretty honest with them. And I went to public events, I'd post about things on my Facebook page, and no one ever really said anything about it. I did an interview with New World Witchery when one of my last books came out, and my sister listened to it. And she goes, "Oh, I didn't really know that you were into those kind of things." And I was like, yeah, but we have other members in our family who are kind of in that realm too. So I have a cousin who is a medium and I don't know if medium is the word she would use. She's like a spiritual coach channel. And
Huh.
so it's like not unheard of in our family, but I also have some very conservative members of my family. I have a lot of brothers and sisters. I have 6 brothers and sisters, and we run the gamut. So I would say, we just kind of have always been like, when we get together, you just kind of check that stuff at the door and we hang out. So it's never really been like a conversation I've had with any of them other than my sister who, listened to the podcast, and she was supportive. So and my
Yay.
immediate family, my husband is from Trinidad, and, grew up around kind of a lot of Caribbean spirituality, that comes like just more kind of indigenous and things from West Africa and things that might not be considered mainstream in the United States. So like you do you, whatever that is. We don't practice together. He doesn't consider himself a witch, none of that kind of stuff. But it's definitely open to like there are bigger things than us. And whatever those are for you, that's okay. And my kids are supportive. So it's I just kind of do my thing. I'm not in people's faces about it, but I also don't really hide it. So
What color is your cat?
I have an orange and white tabby.
And you have all black clothes.
And I have all black clothes. Yes. We had a black cat too, so it didn't really matter. But it is the running joke is that, and my son and his girlfriend have 7 cats, and they're all different colors. So he's like, it doesn't matter what color I wear, the cat hair is going to show up. So yeah, I do wear almost all black. I have a few gray and navy things because sometimes a thing I like will not come in black. But the cat is orange and white, so I always have cat hair on me. It is impossible to walk out of the house and not have cat hair somewhere.
I started out only having black animals, and then gradually, suddenly Chuck appeared. It's long-haired white dog.
Yeah.
And now we have a variety, but we're transitioning back into all black animals because if I gotta have animal hair, I need at least one color that I can wear regularly.
Yeah.
That it doesn't all show. I mean, it's gonna be there, but I don't want it to show up.
It doesn't show up. Yeah. We really would like to get another cat. Like I said, we had a black one that died a couple years ago, and we would really like to get another one. But Orion is 13, and he really does not like other cats. And we're kind of like, we'll just let him have his golden years alone,
Nice.
and then we will get a
mean.
bonded pair of black kittens. That's the plan.
So,
that's the plan, but cats have a way of choosing you.
Yeah.
You don't always get to choose them. So that's the plan, but it may not be what happens. So.
Do you ever feel self-doubt? And if you do, how do you cope with it?
Oh, imposter syndrome. Yes. Oh my God. Yes. Yeah. I mean, because the first book I published was with a small imprint that my friend's sister started. I actually sent my friend the book and said, just tell me if I should stop and hang it up. Because I did my undergraduate degree in creative writing, but it was poetry. And so I'm like, I'm not a novelist. Let me, tell me what you think. And she sent it back to me with a lot of incredibly helpful notes. And she said, my sister would be interested in publishing this if you're interested, if you want to do some editorial work. And I kind of sat on the floor and had to pull myself together. So when it did come out, I was like, no one's going to take me seriously because it's, for most intents and purposes, it's kind of self-published. I mean, I paid the editor myself, all that kind of stuff. And so that doesn't make me a real writer because I'm not published with some, like Penguin or whatever. And then just like, who do I think I am to write this book? So yeah, I went through a lot of imposter syndrome, and I'm not going to say that I don't still have it. Like, I think I wish I could, there's a kind of a theme for this idea that your taste in whatever your art is always exceeds your ability to some level, like because your understanding of the art you're producing is often better than like where your skills are.
Hate it.
Yeah. And it's just, it exists. So I read other authors and I'm like, I will never be that good. But I read the first book I wrote and I read the last book I wrote, and it's better. Like I can see objectively that my writing is improving, but I still am like, who am I to think that I should be able to publish books? So
whatever. Publish them
Yeah,
all.
but I just do it, I just do it
Good.
because that's what I want to do, and, if people enjoy reading it, and thankfully I've had enough feedback to go, "Yeah, I really enjoy your books." So, that's made it a little easier. There's also this, like, I don't know if it's real. It could totally be an apocryphal tale, but was it floated around, like, in writer circles for a while that Neil Gaiman, who I, consider definitely an influence on my writing, was at a talk with Neil Armstrong, and Neil Armstrong was talking about having imposter syndrome, and Neil Gaiman related to this. And I was like, well, if Neil Armstrong and Neil Gaiman have imposter syndrome and they do what they do, then I should just shut up and get to work.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, that's a good thing. So I remind myself of that. Whether it's true or not, it's been incredibly helpful. And I still deal with it. And, I still, in the middle of this book I'm working on now, I'll read something and go, wow, I wrote that. That's not bad. And then I'll read something else and go, holy crap, I wrote that. That really needs to go. It's just, I think being that, we're all going to be that way. Anyone who's creative is going to have that experience. And I don't know that I'm suspicious of people that don't have some imposter syndrome. I think I'm a little envious, but I'm also like, how self-reflective are you? So,
Yeah.
but that's them, and they can they can do their thing. I'll be a little envious and maybe a little suspicious too.
Yeah. What do you most want out of your practice?
I think kind of what we talked about earlier, like that sense of disbalance of like this. I think I'm just one of those people, and like I said, I don't know. I'm a little skeptical too. I'll be honest. I'm a little skeptical about everything just because that's the way my brain works. But I came into the world a double Scorpio. I'm Scorpio sun, Scorpio moon, and I tend to be a little morbid. Like it's just kind of who I am. Like I'm interested in dark. I was always interested in dark things, and even though I was terrified as a child, I was terrified of the dark. I was afraid of water. I had all of these weird kind of hangups, and still horribly afraid of heights. Like that hasn't passed at all. But I think just like finding that there is a balance in there. And I think some people feel that with knowledge, and some people feel it with religion and faith, and whatever that whole is that we all come here with. Like for me, that like this practice, this eclectic, esoteric Victoria witchcraft, whatever it is, like I don't consider myself part of any specific tradition. Like that has filled that hole for me, and I feel a little less lost in the world because of it. And I mean, all I can really do is hope that everybody finds whatever that thing is, and hopefully it's not something self-destructive. So
Do you have a coming out story? Have you come out as a witch? Like to anyone?
I mean, not like, I mean,
'Cause
I've
I
had
haven't.
people ask me, like, I've had people ask me and just go, are you a pagan? Are you a witch? And I was like, yes. Or they'll say, are you a Wiccan? And I'll go,
Nope.
no, but you're close. And then I usually explain, Wicca is a very specific thing. And though my witchcraft is obviously influenced that just because, I was 18 in the 90s, it's obviously influenced by Wicca.
Yeah.
But, it, I think most people are more curious than judgmental, at least in my personal experience. I know people who have had judgmental experiences. So I know that that's out there. I've just been very lucky. And like I said, to me, it's just another way of looking at the world. I mean, attended Unitarian Universalist churches forever. And because it was a safe place in the South to raise my kid, and just have, a community. But one of the things that I've taken from Unitarian Universalism is that same light through many windows concept that, we're all looking for the same. If you are a religious person, if you have any kind of spirituality, we are all kind of seeking the same thing. Is that connection to that, and connection maybe to other people. Some people may be in their hermitage phase, and that's okay too. And I think however you get there, again, as long as it's not destructive to you or other people, is good. So I'm okay with that. And so I try not to be judgmental of other people, and hopefully that follows. Now, I'm not going to say that I have never said any disparaging words about anyone else's faith or spirituality. I won't mention this particular one that I tend to talk about because they tend to sue people. But it's like, I do think that there are definitely paths out there that can be destructive. I feel like if your path means that you have to cut ties with everyone you care about, maybe you're in a cult. There are some red flags out there, but I think for the most part, it's really just, what fills that hole? What is the thing that makes you feel like you belong here, or at least that you came at a time that you're supposed to be here, or whatever it is, whatever the philosophical bent is to it. So yeah, I don't know if that actually answered your question. That was a really long way around that.
Well, it took us on a good trip. I don't care if it's answered or not. It made me think about stuff.
Yeah. Well,
Like,
good.
I don't know. I don't always put things into words very well. The thing about what people who have religion are looking for. That's, oh.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's the same light through many windows. Yeah. I think I've also heard it like there are lots of paths to the top of the mountain. And I just respect, I mean, if somebody has found a path or, that works for them, and they can be good in the world, or, be ambivalent in the world, I'm good with that. So,
But it makes me question why I do or do not have religion.
I mean, I think I know a lot of people who consider themselves atheistic witches, but I think if you practice witchcraft, you have to believe that there's something beyond what we've explained through science. So I don't think it's necessary religion. I mean, I think there is this, and I don't think that we might never explain it by science, but I think you have to believe that there's something out there that you can't see.
I find atheism hard to believe in.
Yeah, I don't know. I find atheism its own dogma, and so it's never been. Even when I went through my I don't believe in anything, I still called myself an agnostic because I was like, I can't believe there's nothing. I can't believe that either.
I didn't know the word agnostic, so I chose atheist, but I have always been agnostic.
Yeah. And I think part of me still, like I said, I'm, at heart, a skeptical person. So, even when I've had experiences, I'm like, was that real? Like the beer, is that real? Did that really happen? Or like, if I have this feeling of like being filled up with some kind of ecstatic, it's not just nerve endings because, there's a certain vibration to the music or the drums or whatever. And so part of my brain is always doing that. That intellectual part of my brain is always trying to separate those things out. Like, this isn't real. You're just experiencing some chemical reaction to blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I just don't want to live in a world without any kind of enchantment. So I just kind of tell that part of my brain to shut up. I just want to enjoy this. Can you please hush? So, yeah. So I think, and maybe that's it. Maybe enchantment is really the right word. It's like some kind of enchantment. Like, I just want to believe that there is still magic in the world. And maybe that part of that is writer brain. I don't know.
What's your biggest struggle with witchcraft?
Consistency, I think. Like, it's really easy to just get in a cult spell and not do anything or not think of anything. Or like, I'm just going to listen to witchy podcasts and read witchy books, but I'm not going to do anything.
Hey, how dare you attack me?
I know. It's like, just at me next time. Yeah, no, I totally and part of me is like, well, why? That's okay too. Like, it's, I try to tell myself that that's okay too sometimes. But yeah, I think that's probably my biggest struggle is just being present and not just intellectualizing everything, because that's like my problem with life in general. So.
Okay, are you ready for the roller coaster?
Yes.
Okay. What makes you angry about the witch community?
I think the thing that makes me angry about the witch community is the thing that makes me angry about a lot of other things is anytime someone steps up and goes, shakes their fist or pounds, table, goes, this is the right way and what you're doing is wrong. Like, I'm not here for that. Like I said, unless you're being self-destructive or you are actively hurting other people, however you define that. Like, if bad information can be harmful. Like, I do think that there is bad information out there. But I think that's the thing. It's just anybody saying, no, absolutely, it's my way, or you're just absolutely wrong. Anyone claiming complete authority over something that we can't see, I have an issue with. So, like, I think that there are definitely, like, if you're going to tell me, yes, if you're into herbalism, this thing, if you ingest this much of it will kill you, that's an expertise I want to listen to. Like, that's not something I can't see. Dead is dead, like, but like just saying, if you choose to work with deities in your practice, you have to do this thing for this god that, there hasn't been a temple to for 2,000 years. I don't know that you're an expert any more than I am. Or if you tell me, there's only one way to be a witch. No, I don't agree with that. So I think it's really,
if you're not genetic, you're not a witch. Oh, really?
right. Or the genetic witches, I don't even know that I think that that's a thing. I mean, I write about them in my books because it's an interesting trope, right? But I don't think in reality, like, I think anyone can be a witch. I don't think you have to be like from the seventh daughter of 7 daughters to be a witch. Like, that's
too many daughters.
Well, yeah, let's not be having that many babies. And the greatest thing, from one of the funniest things my husband has ever said about people who have like 27 children, is it is a vagina, not a clown car.
Not a clown car. That's my favorite.
I love it. And I'm just like, yeah. So yeah, nobody needs to necessarily be having 7 daughters of 7 daughters. As someone who comes from a big family, like, I love all my brothers and sisters, but I'm sure that was really hard on my mom's body. So yeah, I think that's my biggest beef with the witchcraft community is folks who kind of chime in and go, it's my way or you're wrong. I don't have time for that.
So what do you love about us?
Gosh, I love the diversity, and I love, like, this kind of generational stacking that's happened. Like, I guess, like, that we do have elders in the community. I mean, obviously we've lost some too. I mean, if you think of modern paganism as going back to Gardner, or, I don't know, you could also go back a little further, I guess, with the Druid revival in the 1800s or whatever. Obviously those people have passed on, but, like, I think just that, we have these elder statespeople, we have academics, we have people who are just lay people, and then you have, some really good stuff coming out of, like, witch talk, like, kids are all right, a lot of them, and just this ability to kind of learn across generations and figure everything out, and that there's new people and new ideas and new thoughts, and that to watch things kind of evolve. I mean, like I said, being, kind of coming into this in the early 90s, still all about that, the witch burnings. And I was like, yeah, well, it turns out we were wrong about a lot of that, and probably by the time I got that information, academically it had already been debunked, like in the 60s, but people were still touting that line. So I think that we've kind of progressed and embraced our own true history, she says with air quotes that no one can see on a podcast. And, like, yeah, we're, paganism in kind of the neo-pagan umbrella. I mean, that's one of my other beefs with the witchcraft community is terminology is very not very sticky, and it changes all the time, and it's difficult to talk about things in a big way. But, we're pretty new still. And so there's a lot of shuffling back and forth about what this looks like and what community looks like and how do we do this, and do we have institutions, do we not have institutions? I mean, we have seminaries now. Who would have thought that would have happened 50 years ago? So I think that part, that it's just growing and changing, and people can change their minds, and you can find out new ideas, and there's 20 books published every week. There's just it's that part, I love. It's really easy to over intellectualize and play in that pool, I think that's the thing I like, is that there's just so much new all the time, new information. Can you hear my
You're a kitty.
cat? Yeah. Okay. I may have to get up and let him out.
Oh, let him know I love him.
Okay.
What do you wish was discussed more in the witch community?
Oh, I think that piece about like, let's talk about the things that we mythologize that were probably harmful. Gerald Gardner probably did more to like publicize this idea of modern paganism. It was kind of also a dirty old man. I mean, let's just be honest about it. And, let's be honest about the fact that, witchcraft isn't all love and light and fluffy bunnies and all of those things people like to talk about. Like, there are dark things too. Like, humans have the capability to have a range of emotions. So good and bad comes from everything. And we're not immune to scandal like any other religion, and sweeping those things under the rug doesn't serve us. To pretend that, we haven't had people who've been accused of pretty horrible things, whether it's, cult like controlling people or, pedophilia, like really horrible things have happened in the witchcraft community, in paganism. And to pretend like that doesn't happen doesn't serve us well. It's better to get those things out in the light and burn it off. Let's not pretend these things don't happen, because then people get damaged, and that's not what this is supposed to be for.
Who would you say are the 3 biggest influences in your practice?
Oh, that's a good question. And I don't know that I've actually thought that one through very well. I think like early in my practice is probably Scott Cunningham, because again, 1990, those were the books that were available. And I always think of Scott Cunningham as like the Mr. Rogers of witchcraft. Like, he was just a gentle soul. He was trying to write about something that was counterculture during the middle of the Satanic Panic. And so it's kind of this soft, like, there's nothing bad here. Like, this is all beautiful. And, no, don't grow that plant that's maybe a little dangerous. He was just kind of like a sweet person. And so I kind of, I think that is probably going to be the undercurrent, just because that was my first exposure book wise to things. And then I think more recently, like, I started listening to Corey Hutchinson and Lane's New World Witchery podcast.
Yeah, they've been around forever.
8 years ago. Like, I wasn't there at the beginning. I would love to say I'm an OG, but I'm not. I cottoned on to them like 7 or 8 years ago. And like, just this, it and I've had the pleasure to meet Corey. I mean, we've talked in person a few times, but yeah, he's a very, very intelligent person with just like so much going on in his head. But
I'd never let him in my bathroom, though.
Yeah, please don't be like
I would never let him in my bathroom.
Please don't be snitching hair from my hairbrush. Yeah. Yeah, I think that this like, it really listening to their podcast, and with his new book that I'm about halfway through, and it's full of dog ears and Post-it notes. Just connecting those things, like we talked about really early about, family things that happen that you never would have associated with folk magic, and being able to reclaim those, and kind of like drawing a circle around these things and going, yeah, this was always here. So I think they've been a big influence in the last few years, Corey especially, but the podcast in general. So Lane obviously has contributed to that too. And then probably the third one, I think, is really kind of that picking up that ancestry piece, and really looking at my family, and like connecting to the culture from where my parents their families immigrated from. And probably that really started with my dad's death, because he died, it'll be 20 years next year. He's been gone for a while. And just kind of picking that piece back up and going, yeah, this is really an important part of my practice, is honoring where I came from and who these people were and what they did. And I think just honestly, and it's really just the concept, and I can't remember where I read it first, like the world is a giant encyclopedia all the time now. But just this idea that like the fact that I exist is that how many people up to this point managed to survive long enough to reproduce, and
Yeah.
like what do we owe them? Like just the fact that we're here is such an improbable thing, and maybe we need to honor that a little bit. So I think that's probably the other piece.
If you think back to when you first started and first decided, I'm a witch, what do you wish somebody had told you?
Oh, not to be so mouthy about it. Like I think like in whatever baby witch. I'm not crazy about that term, but in those baby witch years,
No one is.
yeah, like I just like everything was about that. Like everything had to connect to that. Everything was new and shiny, and it's the zeal of the converted, I guess. And
Yeah.
I think just like it's like maybe you don't have anything to add right this moment, but you will if you pay attention. Like just hush for a minute and listen. I think that was the thing. Like just all new knowledge is not accurate knowledge. So it's like you need to park on this a little bit. And honestly, I think I listened to that advice too hard in my writing. Like I didn't publish a book until I was 44 because I was so afraid of saying something wrong. So like I think in that part I listened to that advice too hard because somebody did tell me that, and I didn't listen to it enough in witchcraft. Like maybe what is it? To know, to do, to be silent. Like sometimes you need to be silent. So I think that would have been like if I had to have a chance to talk to early witch Victoria, I would say you need to just be quiet for a little while. So
This podcast is driving home so many things to me because I had never heard that term until the first person I interviewed. And now it's come up again. And plus there's some other recurring things.
yeah.
I got to talk to the universe and see what it wants.
Yeah. There's signs and sigils find their way to you. Yeah.
Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that I didn't ask?
I don't know. I mean, I think one of the things for me that's been interesting to kind of figure out, funnily enough, I had a conversation about this yesterday, is that I tend to put things in buckets. Like this is my writing bucket, and this is my day job bucket, and this is my, former chef life bucket, and this is my witchcraft bucket. And I try to keep those all separate. And I don't know why. Like I think I'm just one of those people who likes to categorize and label things. Like I probably could be an apprentice to Marie Kondo. But the thing that's happened over the last few years, and I think writing these books and finally publishing them and getting that out into the world made me realize that writing is actually part of my practice. Like that is a type of creation. It is kind of magical to be able to create this whole world that somebody else is going to step into. And it's, writers have done it from the earliest writing we have to capture these moments in time of reality or to create something entirely outside our reality. And so I've tried to really be more present for that. And I don't really have any rituals around writing or anything like that. I mean, I keep a chunk of Amazonite on my desk because it's supposed to be good stone for writers, like little things like that. But really, to me, like that, incorporating those things. So a lot of what I do as research in my witchcraft life makes it into the books. So I get to kind of let those buckets get to slosh over a little bit. And that's been really nice to experience that and have that and just kind of go, everything can be one thing. It doesn't have to be so separate.
Your corn can touch the gravy.
Right. And I've never been one of those people. Like, I don't care if my food touches. So why do I care if things in my life touch? Yeah. So it's been kind of the eye-opening thing in the last couple of years. And it also makes me happy to think about the fact, I'm going to turn 50 next year, which still is kind of like, how did that happen?
Exactly.
But that I can still
What
learn.
is happening?
Like, I'm not like encased in, lucite. Like I have the ability to be still a student of my own life, of other people's lives, I can still learn and grow and change and do all those things. So I don't know, it's just kind of a nice revelation to have as I look down the barrel of 50. So
God, this gold is it's gold. Something about gold, right?
mhm.
Ugh.
Yeah, I do. One of the things I do appreciate about getting older, and my sister is 10 years older than me, and she's told me this a lot. Like when you get to 35, you just don't care what people think anymore. And it took me a little longer than 35, but it did start
Me
to
too.
lessen. And then by the time, now I'm like, it's just kind of easier to be yourself because, like, well, it's really easy to be myself when I've mostly been by myself with just my husband and my kids occasionally for the last year and a half. It's pretty easy to just be who you are all the time. But even out in the world, it's like, this is just me. And if you don't like me, that's okay. You
Yeah,
don't
I
have
don't like all
to.
of y'all.
Yeah, like it's fine. And, I'm not going to say that I don't still have, those like things that get thrust on women about like, make sure you look decent when you walk out, or, like we all still have those kind of
Yeah.
hangups sometimes too. But I'd like to get to the point where I don't care about that. Swamp witch is a great goal. I'm not there yet, but like I love the idea of
Man,
being to the point where like it does not matter. I could leave my house without a bra on and I will feel no shame.
that's what I want, to leave my house without a bra.
Yeah, I'm not there yet. I'm close,
Me
but I'm not
neither.
there yet. So yeah, like that to me is like, these are the things you grow into. And I have never been like that whole like maiden, mother, and crone thing. Like I think that's very reductive. There's actually a line in one of the books where they talk about that. And she's like, please do not, judge a woman by her proximity to a man's genitals. She says it a lot
Oh
more
my
frank than
God.
that. But I was like, yeah, that doesn't work for me. So I don't know that, like, there's like, oh, you're passing from your motherhood phase into your crone phase. Garbage. Women can be productive and have these fertile ideas. Maybe not babies at 50. Please no, I'm not interested in that.
No, thank you.
But you can still be this productive person and have some wisdom. Like I would like to think I will achieve more wisdom and that my productivity will continue that I'll get better as a writer. I want those things to both increase as I get older. So I guess, swamp witch, better writer, a little more wisdom, not buying into patriarchal ideas about women. Those are long-term goals. So,
I approve.
yeah, I mean, I think those are pretty good.
Who would you like to see on the show?
Oh, I'm still catching up because I listen to entirely too many podcasts. I'm catching up with a lot of people, but I don't know, the people that I've kind of been interested in lately, I love this whole discussion around learning about closed practices, though we don't need to adopt them. So like next on my TBR shelf is Lilith Dorsey's book about voodoo. So I think she would be a really interesting interview. Like I think those folks from outside the general, we have, I think witchcraft in the United States is very white and very European.
Yep.
And I am kind of bored with that. Like that's really a very flippant way to say it. But I do think there's so much information out there. There's so much to learn. There's so many interesting people to talk to. And so I think those kind of guests would be interesting. Because I just love hearing from those people. Like I mean, you are a good interviewer, and I think having,
Thanks.
asking interesting questions and finding out, what they can share, like a closed practice. Like I understand there's always going to be things that we can't know, right? That's part of it being closed. But the things that they can share publicly and just how rich traditions are and like just how much is out there that you can know about. And like, why some of the things that people have adopted from closed practices should be put down again. Like those conversations are important too. So yeah, I think those kind of things would be interesting. Just because I think, like I said, I think you're a good interviewer, and it'd be interesting to see your take on those things and how you talk with those folks. So yeah,
Wow.
so kind of a general answer, maybe a little bit of a cop out, but
I have some coming actually.
Oh, good. I'm excited.
And are you ready for the 2 unlisted questions, which everyone who listens to the
Yes.
podcast already knows?
Yes.
Recommend something.
recommend something. Well, because I'm in the middle of reading it, I will say New World Witchery by Corey Thomas Hutchison is a must-buy book for anyone practicing in the U.S. He's done a fantastic job of just compiling, this huge compendium of American folklore, and also acknowledging that American folklore isn't just white European folklore in the United States. And he said himself, he's not the person to write all those things, but he does touch on them and is anxious for other people to talk about it. So I really, really recommend that book, and his and Lane's podcast, New World Witchery. Also highly recommend those. And then another book I will recommend is The Witches of New York by Amy McKay. It is probably one of my favorite books, and it has been like a pandemic reread, comfort read for me. She, in many ways, like Corey, are just researchers at heart. So there's just so much beautiful detail in that book. And the audiobook is fantastic too. If people I occasionally listen to it rather than read it. But yeah, I just love the worlds that she's created. Like, she's just I want to be her when I grow up. So, as a writer, I aspire to be able to just plop you down in the world, and that's all you can smell and see and taste. So.
And the last question is, please tell me a story that you love to tell.
I thought about this one, and I've gone back and forth on it. I think one of the stories I love to tell is, one, I tell the beer can story a lot because it's kind of my origin story. But I just think there was when I first decided that I was going to look outside Christianity for whatever filled the hollow, I met this woman in one of my classes. I was taking women's studies as my minor. And so I met her in one of my classes, and she invited me to this thing on campus, and I was all women. I'm pretty sure all cis women at that time. I wouldn't swear to that. In this room on campus, just a conference room, the most mundane thing you could possibly imagine, Formica tabletops and, polyester covered chairs. And someone had brought this incredibly beautiful, throne pottery vase, and blue at the top, at the desk at the front. So that was on the desk. And then all of the women in the room, and there were probably, I went to a state school in Tennessee, so not particularly artsy or anything, although there were artsy departments. But there were probably 30 or 40 women in this room, which is, fairly impressive. And it was kind of this, I would say more women's spirituality than Wicca or pagan or anything like that. And everyone in the room was given a little cup of water, a quarter cup of water. And then when you got to the front to this base, you would name all of your mothers that you could, all of the generations that you could remember. And I realized, I knew my mother's name, I knew my grandmother's name, I knew my great-grandmother's name, and that was it. That was all I knew.
Me too.
And there were a couple of other women there who could go back much further than that, and I was just kind of in awe of them. And just this idea that there's one of those light bulb moments when your prefrontal cortex isn't completely finished, and you just realize that everything that you've done is because of these people who came before you. And that to me was yes, this I'm in the right place. This is it. So, and I can now name at least my great-great-grandmother. So, but the downside of Appalachian family and the downside of a Swedish background is that Swedish is really hard to trace, and Appalachia, the names, no women were called by their name half the time.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So it's just difficult to go much further back than that. But yeah, just this idea that, this is, being around people who think about things this way, I'm in the right place. So.
Wow. Well, thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And thank you for doing the show. Like, it's been a pleasure to listen to. I am a total podcast junkie, and it's now in heavy rotation. So,
Really? Yay!
yeah. No, it's like I said, like this generational world we live in, and I feel like there's not a lot of Xers out there. Like, we are kind of quiet, so it's nice to have more
Yeah.
in that realm. So, yeah. Xers need to speak up a little bit more. So,
Yeah.
we're the forgotten generation, I think, at this point. So,
Yeah.
I think it's good to
Poor
hear from
little
us.
latchkey kid.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. So much latchkey life. I mean, part of the reason I learned how to cook because I had to
Yeah.
feed myself. My little brother and I had to feed ourselves. So,
Well, thank you again.
yeah. Thank you, and good luck with as the podcast continues.
Thanks. Now everybody needs to go get your books.
Oh, please, yes, they are available anywhere books are sold. You can order them in hardback or ebook, and you can order them from thousandvoltpress.com, and I will sign it for you.
Neat.
Yeah.
Well, I will see you on the internet then. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of Your Average Witch. You can find us all around the internet on Instagram at Your Average Witch Podcast, Twitter at Average Witch Pod, Facebook at facebook.com/Your Average Witch Podcast, at YourAverageWitchPodcast.com, and at your favorite podcast service. Want to help the podcast grow? Leave a review on Apple Podcasts. You just might hear your review read at the end of the next episode. If you'd like to recommend someone for the podcast, like to be on it yourself, or if you'd like to advertise on the podcast, send an email to youraverageWitchPodcast@gmail.com. Well, I will see you on the internet then. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of Your Average Witch. You can find us all around the internet on Instagram at Your Average Witch Podcast, Twitter at Average Witch Pod, Facebook at facebook.com/Your Average Witch Podcast, at YourAverageWitchPodcast.com, and at your favorite podcast service. Want to help the podcast grow? Leave a review on Apple Podcasts. You just might hear your review read at the end of the next episode. If you'd like to recommend someone for the podcast, like to be on it yourself, or if you'd like to advertise on the podcast, send an email to YourAverageWitchPodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the moon changes.